Go.
All right, so we're here with,
Dan Van Haitsma.
and he's another fellow Mopar racer. We actually ran at the same track at the same time, but I was a little bit of a puss, so I never went over and talked to him or introduced myself to him. And I was running a Chevy at the time, so I felt a little down about myself. And so
It don't bother me none.
so tell us what you run and how long you've been running. Just give us the rundown of your racing career.
Well, I've been running dirt track for over 30 years. Started in 1987. Built my first car out of a '73 Charger. Don't hate me. It only cost me $250 for that car back then, so they weren't worth much.
Well, they're not the desirable B-body anyways.
They are now.
Well, yeah, now everything is.
But yeah, and had some limited success with that. Pretty much the only Mopar on the track. And
Well, that was up in Michigan.
up in Michigan.
Yeah.
Yep.
What tracks was it?
Merritt Speedway and M113 at the time, and they changed the name to Cherry Speedway, and that track is now closed, unfortunately. But
Story with most tracks nowadays.
ran most of the tracks in Michigan at one time throughout my career, so did okay. Moved to modifieds in, I believe, 1990. Ran the IMCA modified for 3-4 years, and then it switched to Michigan modifieds, and ran them up till late 90s.
And you had a Mopar in the mod.
Mopar all the time. Yep. And then I built a limited late model, which I Mopar powered for a couple of years, and figured out that well, they kept changing the rules, and it got too expensive for me. Went back to modifieds and raced another modified with a fair amount of success. Won some good races with it, and 2006 was the last year for that. 2007 ran a Chevy car, the only Chevy I ever ran for a season, for another guy. I drove for another guy. Same time I was fielding a car for my daughter in the 4-cylinder class.
That was a Shadow. So
The Dodge Shadow,
Yeah.
Mopar, that I built in the garage myself. Yep. And she won, I don't know, a lot of races with that car. She made her old man look like a, yeah, she did real well. But now, teenage years and boys came into play, and she quit racing. And 2008, I moved down here to Texas, and I bummed around North Texas here for a few years until I bought this place that we're at now. And when we bought this place, I started looking for a car, and 2012, I started racing IMCA hobby stocks. So raced hobby stocks for 2.5 years probably. Won 2 track championships at Boyd with that car, Plymouth Duster, and
So
then I built another car and moved to factory stocks, and that's where we're at now.
You remember the setup on the hobby stock for any guys still running a Duster? Like what?
It's an A body. Yeah, bigger torch bars. I had 114. I believe they were Mopar Performance, old stuff that they sold back in the day for dirt track or circle racing. Landrum leaf springs in the back. 175, 200 pound, depending.
Which Landrum still makes stuff for.
Yes, you can get. There's like 3 different manufacturers make the Chrysler A-body rear release springs still. You can get, I think you can get Speedway, you can get Landrum, and you can get AFCO, I believe.
AFCO,
Yes. And the price is probably in that order. Speedway cheapest, Landrum second, and AFCO is higher. I was always low budget, so Landrums it was.
That's what I got for my car this year.
Right.
Landrums. That's what the chassis builder told me to get, and that's all he runs on his. And he won
Right.
the national championship with this car this year, so they got to be halfway decent.
Yeah, I've run them for several years on the same set. I'm very low budget. Build all my own stuff. Build my own motors. Build everything. Build the cars and everything myself. So that's pretty much the last couple of years. Probably because I built my own motors, I started having some problems with the engines. Yeah, 40-year-old parts might have not helped much.
Well, you did pretty good when I saw you. I think there's probably, I don't know, there's probably 25, 30 cars there that night, and you started second from last. And you were definitely in the top 10, if not farther up, and you marched all the way from the back, and you were picking people off, and it was super dry slick, and you were picking them off. I mean, if it was a 50-lap race, who knows where you would have ended up, but you were moving forward the whole time. No one got by you, so.
Yeah, well, that's probably experience.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of that's experience. The car definitely is not as fast as the new cars, but it's a $3,500 car racing against $30,000 cars, so.
Yeah, it's nuts. I've seen people sell
You know,
the hobby stocks for that or whatever they call them.
Yeah.
30 grand for
the new Outlaws and stuff are, you know, by the time it hits the track, they're all of 30 grand.
which
So, and until I started having the motor problems, I was consistent top 5 car every night. And I won a few. Raced here in Texas. I've raced at Boyd because it's only 5 miles from my house. KSP a couple of times. Kind of rough down there, and I didn't go very much. Always got beat up a little bit. Didn't care for that too much. Got to fix my own stuff. 281 down to Stephenville.
Yeah.
Raced that.
That was closed when I ever got down here. So
Raced Abilene a couple of times. I've raced up to Ardmore, SOS they call it. Southern Oklahoma Speedway, I think it stands for.
Yeah.
There's a track up in Wichita Falls
That closed.
that they renamed to Monarch. I raced there once or twice. I actually did one of the shows at Texas Motor Speedway dirt track.
Oh,
Didn't make the feature, but I made the feature.
provisional or?
I made the feature under a provisional, didn't know it, and didn't actually take the track. But yeah, that's kind of a kick in the butt right there. Think of where else I've raced here in Texas. Oh, Abilene,
Yeah.
Heart of Texas, or not Abilene, Waco.
There you go.
Heart of Texas, ran down there half a dozen times, did well. Pretty much did well wherever I went. Oh, there was another one over here in the DFW area called
Cowtown?
Mountain Creek,
Mountain Creek?
which is Grand Prairie, and it had a couple different names over there. Raced over there. Cowtown actually closed down the year I started racing down here, I believe.
And that's by Kennedale, isn't it?
It was, I mean, I went down there to watch the races. I went to Cowtown. I sat in the bleachers, and during intermission at Cowtown, I watched the races at KSP. It was down the hill. So I could watch them racing around the track.
So they raced the same night and they're that close.
Yes.
So no wonder why one of them closed.
Literally, there was a hole in the fence, and some of the racers, if one of the tracks ran later, they would, after their feature there, they'd go and try to race a feature at the other track. Yeah, interesting stuff. So, but
You want to show them your car now?
sure, sure. It's not much. It's sitting in the weeds now. I haven't got it out this year yet. but this is a car that I built in the garage there. I pulled the car out of a field in East Texas, brought it home, gutted it out, and this is it. I think it's won five or six feature events, bunch of heat races, pretty consistent top 5 car when I kept the motor together. Really the only big problems I had with it, and that's just me not spending the money on the parts to keep it together.
You ran stock rods and everything, right?
Everything.
Yeah.
Yep. Stock rods, crank.
Stock rods, they don't have a dowel pin to hold the cap
Nope.
in, so they walk a little bit
Nope.
compared to Eagles and Scats and all that. So.
A lot of times they weren't even resized. Probably had 100,000 miles on them, threw new rod bolts in them, and here we go.
Do you run all factory main bolts and all that in them? And,
Yes.
and then this
Factory.
one, you have Magnum heads on it, you said.
This motor I built for a friend of mine, and he ended up not using it, so he let me borrow it. So it's actually not my motor, it's his motor. I got to give it back. So
You going to race this year at all?
I don't think I'll be able to race this year. I'm moving back to Michigan, so I can't bring myself to sell the car. It's just got too much memories in it. I'm gonna take it. Maybe someday they'll have a vintage class I'll be able to race it in. I'm hoping. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, how good you do down here. I mean, the factory stocks, I mean, it's a serious class. Like you said, they're $30,000 cars, and he was marching to the front, so don't let him downplay himself. He does pretty good with it. And as me being a Mopar fanatic, I'm like a little kid screaming up in the stands for him. But yeah, I remember seeing it. I just got so excited, but I was just a puss. I never went over and talked to him, but I was always cheering for him. And,
It was just a 360 motor with this one actually has factory Magnum heads on it. It's an LA block with factory Magnum heads. So obviously it's oiling through the push rods. 904 automatic, run it in second gear, and
you have a converter in it, or?
Yes, a converter. It's required in this class to have a converter, and
Just a stock one or an aftermarket one?
just stock low stall, and
you have a 318 Performer on it, metal block,
yep, and a Holly 500 2-barrel.
Okay.
This carb was built by Baldwin in East Coast somewhere.
You have an 8 3/4 in it?
It's got an 8 3/4 V-body rear end. Don't tell the tech guy. Which is like an inch wider than an A-body. And 430 gear with welded spiders right now. I've run 410 gears in second, 430 and 456s. And the way it's set up right now, I turn 5,800 on a good night. So
You're
I
not
do that to
screaming
try
it.
to keep the motors together more. The last motor I had before I really started having engine problems, which I should have never got rid of that motor or tore it down and did stuff to it, I ran for 5 years. So machine work is probably a big deal, you know. Find somebody that's competent and knows how to read their micrometer properly.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why a Chevy machinist can't do a Mopar block. It's the engines don't know they got a name on them.
Yeah, all the equipment's the same other than
yeah,
your
just-
pilots, and most of the time Mopars run an 11/32 guide. I'm not going to call it a Chevy valve, it's just 11/32 guide valve because they can go in anything, so it's not a Chevy valve like people like to call
Right.
it. It's just an 11/32 stem valve.
Right.
We don't got to turn ourselves in on it.
And in thinking in retrospect, I should have actually gone with a Magnum valve, which is basically a 5/16.
Yeah, 5/16.
You know, a 8mm. So you can gain a little bit more there. Anything you can do. And truthfully, that's you know, as long as you got compression where you're allowed by the rules, the power's in the heads. The power's in the heads and the cam. Find yourself a good cam builder, somebody like Bullet or Howard.
Is that what you have in this? Is Bullet?
This is a Bullet.
Bullet.
Well, actually, this one's a Howard.
It's a Howard.
This one's a Howard, but this was not my motor.
What's your lift rule? Hobby stock? Is it 450?
0.47, 447. So
447.
yeah, 450. You
Yeah,
can get away with 450.
Yeah, because the angle of the
Yeah,
valve
you
train
lose a
and
little
bull
bit
bar,
in geometry. And they have a vacuum roll, 14 inches at 1200 RPM, and a cranking compression of 175, which I don't know why the rules are the way they are. And doesn't make no sense to me because you can
just turn the exhaust ratio way up on it, and then your crank
you could have 12 to 1, tell your cam grinder, well, you know, I can only pump 175 pounds, and he goes, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He'll build you a cam and it'll crank 150 psi, but you'll still have 12 to 1 stranded compression. So yeah, I mean, but I don't. I've actually got this particular motor here has got stack, cast, dished, Dodge pistons or factory pistons,
which is like
factory
5 to 1 or whatever, or 8-4 to 1 or something.
Well, with the Magnum head, and I did go with the 28,000 stick gaskets on this motor for this guy. It came out to right at 8.5 to 1 compression. Yeah, it would have been down to 8 to 1 if I'd had the LA heads on it. So yeah, I stop at the gas station and fill it up with 89 octane and go to the track.
What do you run like stock brakes and everything on these, or what's?
I actually put yeah, the front are stock late A body, F body, J body type brakes.
Okay.
Geometry wise, the Aspen Volare Murata type spindle is a little bit taller than the A body spindle, so it helps the geometry. I use them spindles, but the stock what are they, 10-inch rotors and slider type calipers. They don't make good pads for them, but they work. I just put some metallic pad on them.
Get some AutoZone ones, they're lifetime warranty. You just take them back every week.
They don't wear out.
Yeah.
You can't wear. I don't think I've put a new set of pads on this thing in 5 years. You don't wear them out. In the back, I actually use the caliper adapters for the small metric.
Yeah.
That you can buy at any circle track outfit. Yes, I put disc on the back. When I was running the IMCA Hobby stock, we had to run the drums. But when we went to factory stock, we're allowed discs. So I built my own disc brake setup on the back. I'm using the Jeep XJ rotors.
Yeah.
And I just put them on there and used the GM caliper and lined them up and welded the GM caliper bracket onto the rear end, and boom, there you go, disc brakes. Yeah. This actually, I'm running a stock cast or steel master cylinder, so I don't have any kind of adjustable brakes, even though they changed the rules and you can do it now.
Oh, you can have adjustable.
Yes, well, you can't adjust them from in the car, but you can have the dual master cylinders. So you could tweak it.
Yeah.
Before the race.
Yeah, we have a little crank handle at our car.
Right, absolutely. I had that stuff on the modifieds and stuff, but yeah.
Is your right front shut off on these, or are you allowed to do
You're allowed to run 3-wheel brakes, but I don't. I don't. I figure that's a crutch, and the brakes are really not the greatest in the world. I need all 4.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in you got to finish the race to win it. So I avoid as much of the altercations on the track as I possibly can. Try to stay out of trouble. So.
And then you run an HEI ignition because we
Yes,
have to, right?
yes.
Do you have to, or?
No,
No, you guys
no,
don't have
but
to-
it's just so easy, and it's cheap.
Yeah. And then what shocks do you run on?
I think my dog would speak. All right. Actually, that was a big deal when I got these shocks. This is glad you asked. I contacted a guy, Club 20. Yeah, Neil. Neil's his name. And he built me a set of Q1A shocks, and it helped tremendously on the car. I was buying used Bilstein geometric shocks off of eBay before that, and hey, they worked okay, but the custom shocks, the custom valving,
So are they for Mopar?
they're expensive, but they work. They're definitely worth the money if you're running one of these kinds of cars and are allowed to do it.
So they set up like, are they a Mopar shock or are they the metric?
No, they're the metric shock, but I was actually able to get have them leave out the tie bars and stuff like that, so I could mount them.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're they mount stock.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Stock location, stock. Yep. They're a stock mount shock for the class. Unfortunately, I think my dog's got out. I got to run.